to invite you to do something a little different with us today.
Okay.
Usually when we start these deep dives, we jump right in, hearts racing, ready to tackle this complex world of information.
Very full speed ahead.
But today, I want you to just take a slow breath. If you're walking, maybe just feel the ground under your feet. If you're sitting, just let the chair hold you for a moment. Let the noise of the day, the emails, the notifications, the endless to-do list, just let them fall away into the background.
That sounds wonderful.
Imagine we're just sitting in a quiet room. Maybe there's some soft light, a comfortable chair, just a shared quiet evening.
It really creates the right space for what we're diving into today. It feels less like a typical analysis and more like a necessary exhale.
I think we need that exhale.
Yeah.
Because the topic today, it touches on a very, very shared burden. I was thinking about the concept of resolutions. Not just New Year's, but that Monday morning feeling. You wake up and say, okay, this week I'm going to be less stressed, or I'm finally going to be happy. We set these massive intentions.
The capital R resolution.
Exactly. And I want to ask you listening right now, to just recall a time you set a big goal like that. Maybe it was fix my anxiety or get 8 hours of sleep every single night.
Something huge.
And do you remember that specific frustration when that resolution started to fade? Not because you didn't want it, but because the weight of daily life just crushed it.
It's a very specific type of grief, isn't it? The source material we're looking at today, which comes from Lunari Labs, it frames this perfectly. It talks about the cycle of setting ambitious resolutions only to watch them fade.
And the result isn't just that you didn't meet the goal.
No, it's that you're left with the anxiety, the overwhelm, the brain fog. You feel defeated. And the tragedy is, we often interpret that defeat as a personal failing. We think, I just wasn't strong enough.
Which is such a painful place to be. You're trying to help yourself, and the very act of trying ends up hurting you more.
It's almost like the medicine becomes the poison.
Yes.
Precisely. But here's the invitation that this deep dive offers today. What if the problem isn't you? What if the problem is the map you were given?
The map, I like that.
The source material suggests we need to shift our perspective entirely. We need to move away from these rigid, heavy goals and towards something they call action frameworks and quests.
I want to pause on that distinction because a word like framework,
Yeah.
it can sound a bit corporate or sterile,
It can, but the way they describe it feels different. It is deeply biological. The core intention for our time together today is to explore a way of being that honors your biology rather than fighting it. The central idea here is that you are the ultimate authority on your own mental wellness.
So we aren't here to give you a lecture or a new set of rules to fail at.
Not at all. We're here to look at the mechanics of why traditional goals fail and how to design a way of living that actually fits you.
So let's settle into this. Let's unpack very gently this tension between the goal and the quest. Why does the traditional advice feel so cold? The just think positive or the set smart goals advice.
We've all heard of SMART goals.
Specific, measurable, achievable. I can't even remember the rest. Why doesn't that work for mental wellness?
It feels cold because it's disconnected from the reality of human fluctuation. The source material makes a really sharp analysis here. It says that traditional goals are outcome obsessed. Think about a goal like reduce anxiety by 50%.
Which, frankly, how do you even measure that? I am now 48% less anxious. It sounds absurd when you say it out loud.
It is completely arbitrary. But the deeper issue is that an outcome-focused goal, it focuses on a distant finish line. It's a point on the horizon that you haven't reached yet.
Right.
And because you haven't reached it, your brain constantly registers the gap between where you are and where you should be.
And that gap isn't motivating. I thought it was supposed to be.
Yeah. For a corporate sales target, maybe. But for mental wellness, that gap is where the shame lives. That gap registers as a threat in the brain. It actually creates stress.
The goal to reduce stress is causing stress.
Exactly. Goals don't account for the daily systems you need to sustain progress. They leave you vulnerable. So when your motivation dips, and it always dips because we are human, you have nothing to fall back on. You're just standing in the gap, feeling inadequate.
It's like trying to climb a mountain by only looking at the peak, but never looking at where you're placing your feet. You're going to trip.
That is a perfect analogy. And that's where the action framework comes in. The source describes it not as a rule, but as a personalized map.
I like the idea of a map. A map implies you can look at where you are right now, and it's okay to be there.
Yes. An action framework is about intentional, flexible systems that guide your daily behaviors. And within that framework, we have quests.
Now, forget video games for a second, though. The metaphor kind of holds up.
It does. A quest isn't this daunting, massive undertaking like Save the Kingdom. A quest, in this context, is a small, repeatable action.
I want to linger on this distinction because it feels really vital. A goal feels static. It just sits there judging you until you complete it. But a quest has movement.
It builds momentum.
Yeah.
That's the key insight here. This approach focuses on what you can actually control. You cannot control being happy by next Tuesday. That's an outcome.
Right. It depends on the weather, on hormones, on other people.
The news cycle. But you can control your behaviors, your environment, and your cues. You can control a tiny quest.
So if we're moving away from the outcome and toward the action, we need to understand the mechanics of why this works, because it sounds nice. Just do small things. But our brains are wired to be skeptical.
Of course.
We've failed so many times before. Why is a quest any different than a failed resolution?
That skepticism is so valid. We shouldn't just accept this because it sounds pleasant.
Right.
But this isn't just a nice idea. It's grounded in behavioral psychology. The source material brings in some heavy hitters here, specifically the work of B.J. Fogg from Stanford University.
I've heard of Fogg. He's the tiny habits guy, right? Floss one tooth.
He is. But I want to go deeper than the catchphrase, because Fogg's research is fascinating. He mathematically breaks down behavior with a model called B equals MAP. Okay, let's break that down.
So for any behavior to happen, whether it's running a marathon or just drinking a glass of water, 3 things must converge at the exact same moment.
3 things.
You need the prompt, which is the reminder, the capability to do it, and the motivation, the desire to do it.
Prompt, ability, motivation. Okay.
Now, here is the trap we all fall into with big goals. We rely almost entirely on motivation.
We wait until we feel inspired or guilty.
Exactly. We wait for that surge of New Year's energy. But Fogg argues and proves with a lot of data that motivation is highly unreliable. It's a wave. It fluctuates based on sleep, blood sugar, stress, time of day.
So relying on motivation is like building a house on a foundation that shifts every few hours. That's a great way to put it. So if motivation drops, which it will, and your ability requirement is high, like run 5 miles or meditate for an hour,
the behavior fails. The equation breaks.
B does not happen. That's right.
This makes so much sense. When I'm stressed, my motivation is at 0. So if the task is hard, I'm just not doing it.
Right. So Fogg's solution, and the core of this whole quest concept, is to manipulate the ability variable. You make the behavior so incredibly small, so easy to do, that it requires almost 0 motivation.
You lower the bar so you can step over it even when you're exhausted.
Precisely. Let's make this concrete. Consider the heavy goal. Be less stressed.
That's a backpack full of rocks right there.
It requires huge motivation, and the ability is vague. Now, compare that to a tiny quest. Take 3 deep breaths after I pour my morning coffee.
I can feel the difference physically just hearing you say that. Be less stressed creates tension in my shoulders. 3 breaths after coffee feels doable. It's almost inviting.
And look at the mechanics.
Yeah.
After I pour my morning coffee, that is the prompt.
You're already doing it.
You are already pouring the coffee. You don't need willpower for that. It's part of your routine. So you're anchoring a new, tiny behavior to an existing one.
And the ability required.
3 breaths takes 10 seconds. You can do that even if you feel absolutely terrible.
And because it's so small, you actually succeed at it.
Which brings us to the neurochemistry of this. When you take those breaths and you actually do it, you feel a tiny spark of success. That feeling, not willpower, but the little dopamine hit of success, is what wires the habit into your brain.
It reminds me of James Clear's philosophy, too. The source mentions his book, Atomic Habits.
Yes, Clear is essential here. He talks about the shift from outcomes to systems, but he goes deeper into the concept of identity.
This part always resonates with me, the idea that it's not about what you do, but who you are.
It's about aligning with an identity. So instead of saying, I need to hit this anxiety reduction number, you start to tell yourself, I am someone who prioritizes calm.
Or, I am someone who takes care of myself.
And every time you do that tiny quest, those 3 breaths, you are casting a vote for that identity.
You are proving it to yourself with evidence.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There was a study in the Journal of Behavioral Medicine that backed this up. It found that these system-based approaches to habit formation They actually improve adherence compared to outcome-focused goals, and specifically for mental health contexts.
So the people focusing on the system, the daily rhythm, stuck with it longer than the people staring at the finish line.
Much longer.
So the science says, stop staring at the horizon. Look at your feet.
And there's another layer to this, which relates to a study from health psychology. It talks about self-efficacy.
Self-efficacy.
It's the belief that you have the power to influence your own well-being. When you track these small actions, when you see that you did the 3 breaths, your self-efficacy grows. You start to believe in your own agency again.
Which is the direct antidote to that feeling of defeat we talked about at the beginning. It's reclaiming your power one tiny breath at a time. But this brings up a practical question. We've talked about the what, the quests, and the why, the science. But how do we know what works for us? Because you and I are different. The listener is different. 3 breaths might work for me, but maybe it does nothing for someone else.
This is where we move into the art of noticing. And I really want to emphasize that word, noticing. We aren't talking about clinical data tracking where you need a clipboard and a lab coat.
It's more like listening, isn't it? Listening to your own rhythms.
Yes. The source material calls us to become health detectives of our own lives. The problem with generic advice, even good advice, is that it misses your unique triggers. It misses the specific texture of your day. So we need to observe.
The source outlines 4 key areas to observe. Let's walk through them gently, one by one. The first one is daily quests.
Right. And this is simply logging those small things. Did you journal for 5 minutes? Did you take a short walk?
And this goes back to Fogg's tiny habits model.
Yeah.
It really emphasizes starting small.
Very small. I meditated for 1 minute. Or I wrote down one thing I was grateful for.
Is it really necessary to write these down, though? I mean, if I did it, I did it. Why the paperwork?
It feels like paperwork, but it's actually reinforcement. There's a study from Frontiers in Psychology that notes tracking these micro habits makes them feel more achievable. When you see the check mark or the little note in your journal, it validates the effort.
It makes the invisible visible.
That's a perfect way to put it. It's evidence that you showed up for yourself.
Okay, so we're noticing our actions. The second area is emotional and mental states. Now, this feels tricky. How do you track a feeling without just getting lost in it?
This requires a lot of self-compassion. It's about noting your mood or stress, maybe on a simple scale of 1 to 10, but you're also noting the context.
Like, I felt a sudden spike in anxiety at 2:00 p.m., something like that.
Exactly, and then you look at why. Was it a work deadline? Was it a social interaction? The Journal of Positive Psychology showed that monitoring emotions alongside behaviors fosters self-compassion.
Also,
You stop thinking, I'm just a crazy anxious person, and you start seeing, oh, I'm a person who reacts to high-pressure deadlines with anxiety. That distance is so healing.
it separates the person from the feeling. It's not, I am anxious. It's, anxiety is visiting me right now because of X.
Beautifully put. It creates a space between you and the emotion. So much power in that space.
The third area is one we often neglect until it's way too late. Sleep and recovery.
Oh, sleep is the foundation? The source suggests observing duration, quality, and consistency. But again, look for the small wins. Did you stick to a bedtime routine?
Even if you didn't sleep perfectly, did you treat yourself well before bed?
Yes, exactly. A 2022 study in Sleep Medicine Reviews found that simply tracking sleep patterns improves our awareness and can correlate with reduced brain fog. It helps you see the link between, say, I stayed up late scrolling on my phone and I feel foggy and emotional today.
Which leads us perfectly into the fourth area to notice, environmental cues.
The context, the surroundings. The source mentions the habit loop. Cues trigger behaviors.
So this is about noticing how your environment, I don't know, pushes you around.
Or how it supports you. Notice how the time of day affects you. Notice how screens affect you. If you realize that every time you sit on the couch with your phone at 9:00 p.m., you end up doom scrolling for an hour. That's a data point.
It's not a moral failing.
It's not a moral failing. It's a cue. The couch plus the phone equals scrolling.
So if you want to change the behavior, you might need to change the cue. Maybe put the phone in the other room.
Exactly. Make the good habit easy or make the bad habit difficult. That's James Clear 101. But you can't design the solution until you've noticed the pattern.
You can't design the solution until you've noticed the pattern. That feels really important. We try to force solutions before we even understand the problem.
We do. We try to apply a generic solution to a specific personal problem. And that leads us to the most empowering part of this entire framework, the N of 1 method.
N of 1. Okay, I want to push back on this for a second.
Please.
Because in every other area of science, an N of 1 is a bad thing. It's anecdotal. It's not statistically significant. If a drug company released a pill tested on one guy, we'd arrest them. So why is this suddenly the gold standard for my mental health?
That's a very, very fair critique. In clinical trials, you want large averages, thousands of people, because you're trying to solve for the general population. But you, listening right now, you don't live in the average. You live in the specific, messy reality of your own life.
I am the outlier in my own life.
Exactly. The N of 1 method says you are a sample size of 1. You are the only subject in the experiment of your life, and that is scientifically valid when the goal is personalized optimization.
So it's a complete rejection of the one-size-fits-all approach.
Completely. It says that correlation is an invitation for self-discovery, not a diagnosis. Just because something works for the average person, like, say, drinking coffee is good for focus, doesn't mean it works for you. Maybe for you, coffee triggers panic.
So you have to treat your wellness as a unique experiment?
You have to. This really counters that trend of looking for the magic bullet or the perfect routine that influencers are always selling.
Right.
A study in the Journal of Personalized Medicine highlights this. They found that mental health triggers are highly idiosyncratic. For one person, a morning walk is the key to stability. For another, it just adds stress to a busy morning. If you follow the average advice, you miss the specific reality of your own biology.
So how do we run this experiment? Let's say I've been tracking my data. I've been noticing my quests, my mood, my sleep. What now?
Now you form a hypothesis. Let's say you notice in your journal that on the days you take a morning walk, just a short one, your mood scores are higher in the afternoon.
Okay, so I see a pattern, a correlation.
So test it. Consciously decide, for the next week, I will walk every morning. The following week, I won't. See what happens. Isolate the variable.
We're really treating your life like a lab.
A very gentle, compassionate lab. Look for trends over 4 to 6 weeks. The source suggests using simple tools, a notebook, a mood sleep chart. You just want to see the invisible patterns.
And what if the data tells you something you didn't expect? What if I do the walk and I actually feel worse?
Then you listen to it. That's the beauty of it. Maybe you find that the morning walk stresses you out because you're rushing to get to work. Okay, good data.
That's not a failure.
That's a finding. So you move the walk to the evening, or you change it to a 5-minute stretch.
That detachment seems key. It removes the sting of failure.
It does. It changes the narrative from I failed at walking to walking at 8 a.m. doesn't serve me. It's about flexibility and curiosity. These are, as the source says, observations, not prescriptions.
Agency. That word keeps coming up in my mind. It feels like the antidote to that heaviness we talked about at the start. When you follow generic advice and it fails, you feel small, you feel broken.
Yes.
But when you run your own experiment and it fails, it's just data. You just tweak the experiment.
Exactly. It counters that feeling of being dismissed. It centers you as the expert. You know your life better than any guru or textbook.
I can just imagine this compounding over time. You know, like James Clear talked about with the compounding effect of habits.
These small quests snowball. One meaningful shift leads to another. You start to trust yourself more. You start to build a life that is actually designed for you, not for some hypothetical productive person.
I'm just picturing the listener right now, maybe thinking about their own life. It's a lot to take in, but in a really good way. It's like a shifting of the ground beneath our feet.
It is, and it's meant to be a slow shift. We aren't asking for a revolution overnight.
As we start to wrap up this deep dive, let's just gently look back at the ground we've covered. We started with the weight of goals, those heavy, outcome-obsessed demands that create a gap of shame.
And we moved to the flow of action frameworks, the personalized map, the quest that focuses on the behavior, not the result.
We talked about the power of tiny habits and the BMX equation, how lowering the ability bar allows us to succeed even when motivation is low.
And the importance of systems and identity. You know, being the person who prioritizes calm rather than just chasing it.
We discussed the art of noticing, tracking not to judge, but to understand, becoming a health detective of your own sleep, your mood, your environment.
And finally, the freedom of the N of 1 mindset, realizing that your biology is not a statistic. You are a unique experiment, and you are the lead scientist.
It really circles back to that frustration with fleeting motivation. We all feel it. But structure, your own structure, offers a path to clarity.
It does. And remember, frustration is just a signal. It's a signal that the current map isn't working. It's an invitation to draw a new one.
I want to leave you, the listener, with a final thought, a closing invitation. You don't have to overhaul your life tonight. You don't have to buy a new planner or download a new app right this second.
Please don't. That's the old way. That's that New Year's resolution energy that just burns out.
Start small. Maybe just notice one thing tomorrow. Notice how the first sip of water feels. Notice how you feel when you step outside for a moment.
The source material mentions resources like the Pioneers program or PDF guide templates. Now, those are great tools if you want a helping hand. But the power isn't in the PDF. The power is already within you.
It's in your ability to observe and to choose a tiny action. So as you step back into your day, or maybe into your night if you're winding down, I have a question for you, a final provocation to carry with you.
What is it?
As you take your next breath, just ask yourself, what is one tiny quest, one small ripple that feels true to you right now?
Yeah.
Not what you should do, but what feels true.
That is a beautiful question.
Thank you for sitting with us today. Thank you for slowing down.
It's been a pleasure. Take care of yourself.
Carry this calm with you. We'll see you next time.